Chiro Hustle. Sit back and learn from the greatest influencers in the profession on the world's #1 chiropractic podcast. Before we dive into this powerful episode, please remember to subscribe to our channels and to give us a 5-star rating on iTunes to continue hustling. This episode is sponsored by Imaging Services, Chiro Health USA, Chiro Moguls, Pure Chiro Notes, Titronics, Sherman College of Chiropractic, New Patients in a Box, the Influencer Authority Podcast Training, Mango Voice, Life Chiropractic College West, and M-Sculpt. Let's hustle.
Hey guys, welcome to episode 473 of the Chiro Hustle podcast. I'm your producer, Luke Millette, and here's your host, James Chester.
So today we have the opportunity of interviewing Dr. Marco Belizaire. And if you want to hear the story of an Olympian chiropractor, stay tuned. Welcome back. This is another episode of the Chiro Hustle podcast. I am really excited about this episode because I watched a movie recently called The Aligned Athlete. And Dr. Marco Belizaire is one of the athletes in that film, Olympic athlete, world-class athlete. And I think we're going to talk a lot about sports science and career and chiropractic specifically. But before we get into this episode, I just want to let everybody know the big why. Why do we do what we do over here at Chiro Hustle? Well, number one, our platform protects freedom of speech. I was once asked, is there anybody that you've interviewed that you didn't air? Only time I won't air anyone is if the audio didn't work or if the video got, caught up somehow. But I believe that freedom of speech is so important. And as what we've seen over the past 3 years, it's even more important than ever that we have freedom of speech. And that leads us into the next thing, medical freedom. We believe that chiropractic is the benchmark for medical freedom. And I really believe that if it wasn't for the chiropractic profession, we'd be in this abysmal state where people wouldn't even know what real true health is anymore. And then we believe in family freedom, family medical freedom, because I believe freedom of choice is for everybody in the family unit. And I know that moms make the decisions for the healthcare of the families. So hopefully this episode gets to a lot of families and mothers. After that, we believe in BJ Palmer's Sacred Trust, protecting it. If you guys don't know what that means, go to your favorite search engine right now and put in the search field, BJ Palmer's last words, the Sacred Trust. You're going to learn so much more about chiropractic than you ever knew before. And then we also believe in subluxation-based chiropractic. If you don't know what that word means and you're watching our show, please go to your favorite search engine once again and look for what subluxation means in the chiropractic profession lexicon. And then lastly, we believe in innate intelligence and universal intelligence. We believe that man or woman, when they get adjusted, it connects them, the physical, to them, the spiritual. And with that being said, Dr. Marco, welcome to the show.
Thank you, sir. Great to be here.
That's a lot to open up with the show, but I think that if we don't say that stuff, people don't understand what the profession of chiropractic stands for.
That's the reason why there's so much confusion about what a chiropractor is and what a chiropractor does.
Yes. So as a podcast host, I had to get really clear over the 5 years that we've been doing this show and say, what would it really matter if no one ever listened to the whole episode, but if they had 2 minutes and they just listened to the opener for 2 minutes, what would be the most important things that I could say for them to walk away with to know more about chiropractic? So I think identity is a big, it's so important. Chiropractic is so important when it comes to identity. And if we don't tell, one of my good friends, Roberto Monaco, always tell me, Dr. Marco, if we don't tell people the truth about chiropractic, someone else will make up one about us.
Exactly.
So
a lot of stories about chiropractic, a lot of bad stories about chiropractic out there.
So we just got to protect the sacred trust and tell the story. I'm sure. Have you ever been to the Dynamic Essentials meetings?
Well, that's what I used to do. And remember on our conversation earlier, I made it my point once I decided, okay, I am in this for good. I would go while I was in school. I went every single DE that was here in town at the Waverly. I was there every weekend. I was there. That I was here. Absolutely.
And the big message behind that group is tell the story.
Right.
And I believe that today we're going to tell an amazing chiropractic story. So let's start with yours.
Mhm.
How did you get into chiropractic, and tell us how your career has developed into what it is today?
Well, my story is one that basically when I got a track scholarship, years ago, and I was going through the pre-med program, and while I was in the pre-med program, my intention was to become an orthopedist. However, when I was going through the through the program, I kept looking at a lot of the students that were in the pre-med program, and what I mostly heard from them, when the reason why they wanted to become doctors wasn't necessarily because they wanted to help people. It was more about a status. I'm going to get into this school because the dean of this school was my dad's roommate, and I am this and I am that. So it was never about helping people. So, and then what happened was, I remember, I was studying, and histology was the hardest. It was basically the hardest class in the pre-med program, and I was determined to get at least a B in that class. And I remember I studied for 50 straight hours. So I went straight from the cafeteria, took a shower, and sat down to take the test. And the instructor had gotten a stroke, several months earlier. So he was still paralyzed on one side, but he was still teaching classes. And I used to admire a lot of the kids that made the dean's list. Now, mind you, I'm on the track team. I'm traveling every weekend, and English is my second language. Okay, and I wasn't getting any D's or getting any F's or anything, but I never made the dean's list. So I used to admire them. And then when I'm sitting down taking the test and I'm looking at, it was a lot of essay, and then I look to my right and I remember seeing some of those kids that I admired, that they had the book open and they were basically cheating. So I just looked at it and started laughing, and I said to myself, "Oh, so they're no more special than me. So this is how they do it." So I started to look at it and I said, "Do I really want to be in the same profession with these people?" And I left it at that. And then when I was graduating, I was walking back with one of my classmates, and he turned around and looked at me. He says, "What are you doing after school? We're graduating." And I said, "Well, I'm studying for the MCAT, but I've looked into a couple chiropractic schools." And he says, "I just got accepted into a chiropractic school in Georgia." And I said, "I've heard about that one." I said, "Well, tell you what, once you get down there, let me know about it." I said, "Next year is an Olympic year. I am going to stay at school and train and try to make the Olympic team. So you let me know about it." So eventually we kept in touch. We kept writing each other, and he kept, basically filling me in. And long story short, eventually I applied and I moved down to Georgia here, at Life. And honestly, coming from New York, I was sitting down in class and listening to, Sid Williams at the time. Honestly, he scared me. I said, "Oh Lord, what did I do?" Because he was talking all this stuff, and I looked at my girlfriend at the time, and I said, "What do we do?" I said, "Well, we're already here, so might as well, stick with it." But I was then sitting down in class, okay, and the instructor was talking about health. Unfortunately, he didn't look very healthy, okay, and he was sweating profusely, and it was cold outside. But he said, I mean, in all honesty, I was actually looking at the wall, not paying attention to him, because in my mind was, okay, I just made an Olympic team, and you're talking to me about health, but unfortunately, you don't look healthy, okay? But he said certain things that kind of got my attention, and he turned around and he said, "The human body is a self-healing, self-regulating organism." So I turned around and I said, "Okay, you got my attention." His next words were, "The power that made the body will heal the body." And that hit me like a ton of bricks, because that basically sat with my philosophy. So at that point, I said to myself, oh my God, I am in the right profession. This is my way of thinking. This is that's part of my view. So I remember everybody talking about dynamic essentials, DE. And I said, okay, I've heard that DE teaches a lot of this philosophy. So I am going to start making sure that I go to every single DE while I am going here through school. And that's exactly what I did. And that's how I ended up, in this profession that almost 30 years later, I love it. I wouldn't change it for anything.
That's such it's impressive to know that, a lot of chiropractors, once they get into school, they don't understand the philosophy, and the schools aren't teaching the philosophy. And I've never been to a chiropractic school, but I hear that it's less and less year after year. And I think that groups like Dynamic Essentials are so important.
Right. You got to teach the fundamentals of what chiropractic is.
Yeah. So let's go a little bit forward now. You get out of chiropractic school, you go to Dynamic Essentials, you learn the philosophy, then you get into practice,
Right.
and then you start working with athletes.
Well, that wasn't really the initial stuff, because honestly, I was, when I got out of chiropractic school, I wanted nothing to do with athletes. Don't ask me why, because I was a high level athlete, but I wanted to work with the general population. However, what happened was a very prominent coach sent some information about a product that he was dealing with. He sent it to the office where I was working. So I picked up the phone and I called him. I said, "Hey, how did you know I was here?" And he looked at me. He says, he said, "I didn't know you were there. I just sent it to different chiropractors' offices." So I said, "Oh, okay." He said, so he turned around. He said, "Hey, look, let's go to lunch. So let's chat." So we sat down. He started to chat. Started telling me about the product and stuff. And then he basically looked at me, and he asked me a question. He says, "Do you have any unfulfilled expectations?" And in all honesty, I wanted to make the 92 Olympic team, and I didn't get to go. So yes, I had some unfulfilled expectations. So, and he turned around and he said, "So I have a group. Would you like to come and train with us?" And at the time in the group, he had the world record holder for 60 meters, and and he was also the world championship silver medalist in the 100, and he had the NCAA champion and the African record holder in the 100 meters. And he looked at me, he says, "You don't have to pay me. All you have to do is take care of the athletes." And I said, "Really?" So that to me was a win-win situation. But little did I know that it was going to be more like an education. So he was coaching me from a scientific standpoint. So he will tell me, I'm going to swing my arm in this position because it's going to trigger this reflex, and it's going to cause the muscle to bring the arm in this position. And that will make you more efficient. So he says, you're going to put your foot in the blocks, and it's going to trigger this tendon to fire. And when this tendon fires, it alerts the brain to tell the glutes to fire. And so he was teaching me from a scientific way. So I was learning it differently than most other athletes would learn it. And because of my background in chiropractic, I kept saying to myself, that makes a lot of sense. So he's teaching me all the mechanics, all the proper mechanics of running, and what makes an athlete run efficiently and faster. So I'm applying all of that stuff, okay? And then I am also going and getting adjusted, because I'm training hard now like I've never trained before. And I'm also going to get adjusted in the doctor's adjusting me. When he's adjusting certain things, he said, this is out. And then I'm starting to think, okay, if this is out, and the coach told me I'm not supposed to strike the ground this way. So if I'm striking the ground, this is going to cause. So now I started to create my own protocol, so to speak. Okay. So when the athlete will come in, now I'm looking at it in terms of, okay, this is what you're experiencing, or this is what you're feeling. Therefore, this is probably what you're doing incorrectly. So now not only am I able to address it and adjust to certain areas to make the body perform better, but I'm also able to let them know, okay, listen, this is what you're doing incorrectly. Let's start changing this out in the track. So when you come in here, it's just a matter of me fine-tuning you rather than having to deal with repetitive strains or repetitive injuries and things like that. So then all that kind of catapulted me into working with athletes. And then everybody now started to come in, not only those that were in the group, but those that were in the group now are letting other professional track athletes know, okay, go see me. So, and that's how, now I ended up working in the sports arena.
You've made it to Chiro Hustle. Sit back and learn from the greatest influencers in the profession on the world's #1 chiropractic podcast. This episode is sponsored by Imaging Services, Chiro Health USA, Chiro Moguls, Pure Chiro Notes, Titronics, Sherman College of Chiropractic, New Patients in a Box, the Influencer Authority Podcast Training, Mango Voice, Life Chiropractic College West, and M-Sculpt. Let's hustle. I think coming from wanting to do one thing and just being a general practitioner, chiropractor, and then getting the opportunity to work with athletes, it must have been some type of a calling, and as I watched the aligned athlete, I started to see that a lot of the people in that film, their lives changed because of chiropractic, and they were all top level athletes, and they were world class sprinters, pole vaulters, long jumpers, the long races, short races. Like it was full of the best of the best.
Yeah. And I actually had several of those athletes that were in the film. I've actually worked with them.
So talk about the film a little bit, because I know that that's a big part of our connection. The aligned athlete. Why is that film important for chiropractors to support?
Well, because one of the things that we've seen within the profession, especially when it comes to what they call sports chiropractic, what we've realized is that it's more soft tissue work and less chiropractic. So when instead of chiropractic being our tool, okay, we got a lot of people that they do everything else and then do chiropractic. And I think one of the reasons for that is their adjusting skills are not that good. Okay, so they resort to other things. That's the reason why it's important for us to hone our skills. We have to be good at what we do. We are chiropractors. We adjust the articulations of the spine and the extremities, especially when we're dealing with athletes. Okay, we have to become good at that stuff. That is our bread and butter. That's what distinguishes us from all the other practitioners. We're not there competing with everybody else, because what we do is unique. Okay, so as we address this, that's one of the things that we wanted to show with the film is the adjustment. That is what we're doing. Okay, with the athlete, is to adjust the articulations to take that stress off of that nervous system, okay? And those, correct that vertebral subluxation. That's a chiropractic vertebral subluxation. That's what we do. When we correct those things, then the body is able to perform better, okay? It's a known fact. Nervous system controls all functions that takes place in the body. The spine is a protective mechanism. The extremities are extensions of your spine. So if we address those things, okay, then your body is, there's less stress on that nervous system. If there's less stress on that nervous system, then the body, when you take it out to the battlefield to compete, that body is prepared to handle that stress. So you're able to take your body to those high levels and compete at a high level rather than compete, at a lesser level.
Yeah, I think a lot of times when people watch our show, I always make them aware that chiropractic helps with physical, chemical, and emotional stressors, thoughts, traumas, and toxins. And most of the time when people think about athletic performance, they think it's a physical thing. But a lot of it is based on the performance of making sure that everything is functioning properly, like sports science. And a lot of times the body also has the chemical component and the mental component. And I think a lot of times when somebody comes back from an injury or they're not feeling proper and they start getting chiropractic care, it helps with the other types of the other parts of chiropractic, not just the physical aspect.
Well, the issue is the body doesn't distinguish between a physical stress, a chemical stress, and emotional stress. It's stress is stress. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So now what happens is, when that stress starts to affect the body now starts performing, decrease. So when it's performance, when there's a decrease in them in that performance, what we do with the chiropractic adjustment is you take that stress off that nervous system, and then the body is able to handle the physical, the chemical, the emotional stressors, therefore allowing that athlete to be able to perform at a higher level. Plain and simple.
And back to the old thing, the thing that you shared at the beginning, the power that made the body heals the body. The body
Yeah.
needs nothing extra in it. It simply needs no interference. Once the interference is cleared, the body has the chance to be a self-regulating organism.
Without question.
And I think that's it's chiropractic poetry to me at that point. And if you know these things and it matters to you, then let's keep on teaching other people. And I think that's what the Aligned Athlete film did, is it actually teaches people and it actually influenced people to know that if a top level athlete can utilize chiropractic services and the adjustment, then everybody should be seeing a chiropractor.
Precisely. It's,
So
go ahead.
no, I was just curious, like you're a world-class athlete. You've been practicing almost 30 years. What are you doing to keep yourself healthy?
Well, obviously, I stress to my patients, I try to go get adjusted at least once a month. Okay. Especially with a lot of the work that I'm doing. And what happened is, several years back, I got certified in a new technique where we actually basically reset the neurology from the brain to the muscle. So that opened some doors to work with a lot of NFL guys. So these are big guys that I'm, having to muscle test and things like that. So, it's a lot of stress on my body. So if I want to serve those athletes better, I have to take care of myself, not only from a physical standpoint, also, my nutritional standpoint, I have to take care of my body overall. Mentally, I have to learn to block all the nonsense and all of that stuff out. Okay. So that stuff doesn't affect me when it's time for me to sit down and work with that athlete. He said, once you get in front of that athlete, okay, once you get in front of the patient, period, okay, is you have to focus. It's you and that athlete. Okay. What is it? Connecting physical man with spiritual man.
Absolutely.
And I have to be there. Okay. So I have to take good care of my body. Okay. So I'm able to take good care of these patients, of the athletes. In this case, because that's where most of my passion is. I take care of the general population, but my passion is working with athletes now.
So let's talk about the advanced muscle integration technique. Is that the technique that you're referring to?
Yes. So years ago, at the Olympic trials, at the track and field Olympic trials, they had a couple docs that were doing it, and we Dr. Gorman at the time, he was a student, and he saw the couple of docs doing this technique, and he's like, "Hey, you guys are taking too long. We need to push through the athletes and this and that." So I left early. I only went for the first half. So when I came back, he comes into the office, and because I was basically, he's like, "You're gonna mentor me, my last 2 years in school." I said, "Sure, no problem." So he comes in. He says, "Hey, I've seen this new technique, and you got to learn it." And I said, "I got to learn it." I'm like, "Come on now." I said, "I've been in practice for over 20 years." I said, "You've seen the work that I've done with athletes." He says, "What is that going to teach me?" And he's like, "Well, I'm telling you, this is next level stuff." And I was like, "Forget about it. I'm not dealing with this." I'm like, So he basically, I tell him, I said, you basically pestered me. So eventually he got me to go to a seminar, but I went to the seminar with a bias. And while I'm sitting there at the seminar, I wasn't really paying much attention. I got the book. I came back to the office, didn't know what I was doing. I kept looking at him like, definitely I'm not doing this stuff. Okay. But now he went to the developers of the technique, and he says, "You need to now teach this to students, and I will get you some students." So he basically pestered them and convinced me to actually come to the class, to come to the module now. And I said, "Come to the module." And then he said, the module was actually on my birthday weekend. And I said, "No, I got to sit down on my birthday weekend to do this stuff." Okay. So he says, "No, I'm telling you, this is next." So I agree. So I went and I sat down. And 5 minutes into the actual class, my mouth dropped. Okay. And that was another aha moment. When Dr. Bueller started breaking down and explaining muscle inhibition, muscle functioning, muscle inhibition, muscle shutting off, the muscle not firing, the body recruiting, okay? And what the process was, my mouth dropped, and I said, "Oh my God, this is exactly what I've been looking for." Okay. So the funny thing is, the following day was my birthday. Class started at 8:00, 7:30 in the morning. I'm sitting in the parking lot waiting. I'm like, "Where is everybody? Where is everybody?" Okay. Because I was so hungry for the knowledge. But what happened was, I told Eric, I said, "You know what? I've got patience. You're a student. I've got the patience. We're going to get to working now." And what happened was, I had one particular patient, okay, that played in the NFL. And his injuries were so bad that the NFL said, "That's it, you're done. Okay? You can't even pass a physical, so you're done." So he accepted it for about 2 months. Then he sends me a text. He says, "Doc, I found another doc in New York, another orthopedist that could do another surgery." He says, "I'm going to go ahead and do it." I said, "Great." He went, he did it, and he came back. He actually showed me the x-rays, and he literally had a joint back in his ankle. And he started doing the rehab, and he was going to the best, supposedly the best rehab clinic, and he wasn't going anywhere. He was 4 months into the rehab, and we were 3 months into the certification for this AIMIT technique. And he says, "Doc, I'm frustrated. I'm not going anywhere." So I sent it some information on the aiming. I said, hey, take a look at it. Let's I said, this is something that, might be worth, maybe worth your time. And he says, I've got nothing to lose. He said, come on, let's go. Okay. So he came in and we started working with him. Okay. And I remembered, he had an ankle issue, but the body, when we started, because basically what the technique is, we're using the proprioceptors in the body to kind of guide us through to say, which muscles to test and how to test the muscles. So what happened was we started, it was an ankle issue, but it didn't say the ankle. It said start with the knee and go to the opposite glute. So that's what we activated the first time. The second session, we activated a ton of muscles in the feet, okay? Both feet. And then the third session, we activated some muscles in the ankle. We didn't understand at the time. What happened was we had an opportunity to do those 3 sessions before his next rehab session. So what happened was he went back after the 3rd session, he went back to Florida to the next rehab session. And when he came back, I said, how did it go? And his exact words were, Doc, my rehab skyrocketed. And at that point, we understood, okay, muscles provide 80% of the stability of the joint. But if the brain has neurologically shut that muscle down, the muscle is not going to engage. So every exercise that they were asking him to do, he was using ligaments and tendons, and he couldn't place the load on it. All of a sudden, we started activating the muscles. Now those muscles were getting that signal from the brain, and all of a sudden, things were starting to go better. So now he's sending me the videos of him running in the pool, and I am correcting him now. You're not striking the ground correctly. Go ahead and change here, change that. So he started changing those things, okay? And that's how we kept going and activating. So he was very committed. So we were literally going 2 to 3 times per week, okay? So eventually, what happened was he left the pool, got on the Alter G machine. From the Alter G machine, he actually started at 70%. And from 70%, he said, man, you're doing so well. Let's go to 90%. He went to 90%. He says, you're even doing great on this. He went straight to 80. He went straight to 100%, put in 100% of the load on the body. He goes back to the orthopedist. The orthopedist now says, hey, you're good enough to now go out and start doing stuff on the grass, okay? When he goes to the grass, his off-season coach sends me a text. He says, I don't know what you guys have been doing, but Zach now is able to actually do things better than, and do some things that he wasn't even able to do before he got the injury, okay? And that's how we kept going, and eventually, he gets another shot to go play football again. The funny thing was that, when they looked at the x-rays, the orthopedist, the team, or the league orthopedist looked at the x-ray, said, no, that's unstable. We got to do another surgery. And so he had to literally fight to be able to go to training camp. So when he goes to training camp, okay, people didn't realize who he was. They thought he was a rookie because he came in such good shape and so fit that what happened was, they looked at him and said, wait, this is a veteran. Why is he looking so good? Okay. But what happened was we were consistently working with him. And long story short, he went back to playing football to the point where I remember I went to the first game and he looked at me and said, my body feels so different out here. Why? Because by activating the muscles and allowing that, that brain to now be sending the signal to all of these muscles to be able to fire, his body was functioning a lot better, okay? And by functioning a lot better, he was a more productive. That's why he said, my body feels so much different out here, okay? So that's what the AMIT technique was able to do, is allow this person that basically they said he was, pretty much done. He couldn't play. But what happened was, that muscle inhibition. The muscles were not firing. So we were able to reconnect that. Okay. And even though the AMET technique is not a chiropractic technique, it's based on chiropractic principles. Okay. Because what happens is, even though we will do some of the resetting of the muscles, is the actual chiropractic adjustment that locks the muscle in. So the specific segments that you know, the vertebral level plus the loved brother and the muscle, the vertebral level that controls the entire muscle, and the vertebral level that supplies the muscle division. Those are the things that we adjust those segments, and then that bam locks the muscle. And that there has, you know, we've been able to, you know, it's opened so many doors to be able to work with some athletes. And the funny thing is, last Friday, when I went to work on one of the NFL guys. And when I flew down, I get a text and a picture, you know, and it's news that one of the athletes that I work with, he had ACL surgery in November of last year. Okay. And I started working with him at the beginning of the season. And I was able to activate a ton of muscles on him. I was going to all the home games. Okay. And I was able to activate a ton of muscles on him to the point where he was back to being a starter and back to, you know, playing at his old level. Okay. And then he gets a contract extension, okay, for $68 million. So his body was able to function better. Therefore, you were able to, you know, like I said, your health is your wealth. So his body was healthy enough that before before the season even ended, okay, he's signing an extension for $68 million. And it's not that the team is doing that well either. Okay. But he's still able to sign that extension. Why? Because we were able to give him access to his body. So he was able to go out there and perform at a higher level.
So once again, the power that made the body heals the body.
Heal the body. That's all I did. No potions. No, no soft tissue. Yeah, I'm all for those things. Okay, get your massage, all that stuff. I don't do those things. I focus on, okay, I am going to make sure, okay, that your nervous system is functioning adequately, so you're able to go out there and perform. And in this case, I am working with, you know, making sure that the neurology from the brain to the muscle is working, so that when you engage that particular part of the body, that body is able to respond. Plain and simple.
Ladies and gentlemen, that's chiropractic. And Dr. Marco, I appreciate you being on with me. Your episode 473. I know there was a lot of stuff that we didn't get to. You gave quite a passionate talk about your career. You talked a lot about optimizing athletic performance through chiropractic, and why it's important to keep yourself healthy so you can perform your best to take care of these people that need your services.
Absolutely.
And I really do believe that chiropractic is safe in your hands moving forward. And I look forward to working with you so much more as our careers develop together. And if people want to learn more about you or work with you, where can we send them to?
Athletics DC is my website. Got some information there, you know, just like athletics and athletics DC, you know, track and field and you know, track and field is known as athletics. So when you look at the Olympics and you see track and field, you're going to see actually athletics. So that's why I call, you know, the website is athleticsdc.com. And that's how you can reach.
And you're down there in Atlanta.
I am in Atlanta, yes.
And it sounds like you travel quite a bit taking care of athletes on the road.
Yeah, I do some of that. I work with a couple of track teams, couple colleges, and of course the professional, a lot of the professional athletes that train down here in Georgia, and actually some from other places. Sometimes they will travel here to get care, and some of the I do take care of a couple NFL players, several NFL players that. Um, uh, just basically fly me in to work with them, or most of them train here during the off season, and that's how we connect, and that's how we're able to go work with them.
I'm fascinated by your career, and if you guys want to see more about the film we were talking about, it's called The Aligned Athlete. Go check that film out. And Dr. Marco, I want you to have a great rest of your day down there in Atlanta. Thank you for being our guest. And I look forward to having you back sometime in the near future.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, have a good day. And I'll always close out by telling people this. You're just one story away. Keep hustling. Let's keep telling the story, Doc.
Without question. Without
All right. All right. Bye for now.
Day. All right. Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening to Chiro Hustle. Don't forget to subscribe and check back next week to continue hustling.